Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to our second session. We're so excited to have you here. I'm Jess Tilley,
And I'm Kathy Bashanko.
and today we're going to be going over the energy of Gate 54. But first thing I want to do is apologize and say I messed up. So, when I had sent out some of the documents for the workbook, some of the dates were incorrect. So I sent out an email. There's an email about this. It's also in the Telegram in case you've missed all of that. Here is, let me share the screen. Don't mind me singing. See. Okay. Can you see the calendar right now?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. So this is the updated correct calendar right here. So notice gate 54, the activation for this was yesterday, January 5th. Gate 61 is activated January 10th. Gate 60 is activated on the 16th of January. And then gate 41 is activated on the 21st of January. And that is the Human Design New Year. Got that real quick. So that was definitely a moment for me. And it was a beautiful moment because in our last recording, we talked about how it's like, don't beat yourself up. You know, this is all for awareness. This is for growth. This is for learning. This is never to beat yourself up. And when I discovered the dates were wrong, what did I start doing? I got my stick, right? And I was like, oh, how could you do this? How did this happen? And just stepping into that energy, right? And at that moment, my reflector friend Brano reached out, was like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, oh, the world's exploded. This has happened. How could I do this? And he had this beautiful advice where he shared, he was like, we're all human and we make mistakes, but it's what we do with that. So I'm here owning my mistake and saying, I'm so sorry for any confusion that may have caused. And also coming back to, right? When I was younger, my mom always used to say, like, if we'd mess the milk or we'd mess like juice or food, she'd say, it's okay to mess. And I really want you to take this with you. It's okay to mess, right? But we clean it up. So this is me here cleaning it up, saying, I messed up. I'm sorry. Here, we're going to clean it up. So I have sent out the correct workbooks. If you, for whatever reason, don't have it, feel free to reach out through here, leave a message, email. I can send you the correct one. And again, those dates are a little bit ago.
Yeah, it's all good, Jess. I mean, and you know what? Honestly, sometimes maybe it was that day somewhere, right? You know, I mean, the world has a big difference in time from place to place. So in some places it might be, a different day. Like I know that, the last transit changed late, late at night, like sometime I want to say 11:40 or something like that, my time. So, somewhere it was already the next day and whatever. So it's all good.
Absolutely. And also really trusting in that process where this is something I was terrified of, right? I was so terrified of messing something up and knowing and trusting that, magnetic monopole is pulling in those experiences for you to have those experiences and work through them and experience these things and go, okay, what was it that needed to come up that I needed to work through for this? So again, no beating, no stick beating. uh,
Yeah. It's if you're not making, I always tell people, if you're not messing up, you're probably playing it too safe in life.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Love that.
all right.
So let's go over questions. If anybody live right now has any questions from the information from last week or about the workshop, please feel free to pop those in the chat. One of the questions we had in the Telegram chat was about year 9 that Kathy had spoke briefly on. So if you want to just give a little bit more context to what exactly the year 9 is.
Okay. So as I said in that recording, 2025 numerology wise is a year 9. So we're moving from a year 8 to a year 9. And that just comes from you add up the numbers 2, 0, 2, 5, and you get 9. And I am no numerology expert. I had just come out of a planning session where a person who was very expert in numerology was talking about how years that are year 9 are all about healing, endings, completion, closure, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of energy that we're going in, that we're now in, because remember, this Gregorian calendar is the year 9, right? So that started. And while we're in this closing up energy of the human design calendar for last year, human design doesn't really have years like that, right? It doesn't have the 2025 year, is not, because we could say that human design started when Ra got the download or whatever, who knows. So anyway, we're in this energy right now as we're wrapping up our last year lessons from a human design standpoint. We're still in this energy of closure, healing, letting go, and that sort of thing. And then, if you are into numerology, that everybody has their own number that goes with the year too. And I'm not going to get in all of that, but so there's other parts that layer onto that. And it's just something to add into your toolbox of ways to get perspective on things. So,
Mm, love that. Yeah, thank
yeah.
you. And then, so if anybody else has questions right now, again, please feel free to put those in the chat. Another question we had from the Telegram group. Also, if anybody needs the information to join the Telegram group, definitely feel free to reach out. Happy to send that along. It's also in the bottom of all the emails. And check your junk email. I've had a couple people let me know that it has been going into their junk emails if you're not getting those. Um, the other question was about 2027. And we are so, so, so excited to let you all know. We reached out to Barbara Ditlow, and we're going to have a bonus episode where she's going to go over a little bit more information for 2027 and those changes. So if you have questions pertaining to 2027, also if you'd like to submit those for us to pass those on to her. So very
And Jess,
exciting.
I'm wondering if for people who don't know who Barbara is, if you might want to tell them a little bit about her amazing background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like honestly, you'd probably be more of the expert on this. But Barbara, she worked with Ron, so she's huge in astrology, right?
Yeah.
It's
She
knowledge.
doesn't have a real strong social media presence, so some of you who are really um, have really come to human design through the Instagram and the Facebook communities and stuff. Barbara is not really there, but she's incredibly knowledgeable and has, like I want to say 30 years of experience with human design. So, but she has a whole course that she teaches about the shift in 2027. And so to have her knowledge, she was if anybody was at the HD conference in Santa Fe, she spoke there about it a little bit. And she's going to be on my podcast, Real Human Design Stories, also. So, um, yeah. Anyway, she's great.
She is. She's phenomenal. I actually, funny side story. So we were at one of Richard's events, and I had never met her personally before, and she ended up sitting next to me. And so as we were going through the chart, she was giving me like little pieces of it, and it was just such a beautiful, special moment. She's definitely her human design, her astrology background, her knowledge is just, oh, it's impressive. It's beautiful. Also the way I really, really love the way she presents the information as well. So we're very excited to be able to have her share some of her knowledge for 2027.
Date will be announced because we haven't firmed any of that up.
Yes, we will announce when that when we will be doing that. So let's move on to gate 54. You want to start with the basics while I share the screen?
So, it's interesting for me because we just went from that gate 38 energy to this gate 54 energy. And gate 38 and 39 are my personality nodes, and the 54 and 53 are my design nodes. So this is really my all about the environment I'm meant to be in anyway. So it's just an interesting perspective that I'm bringing into this whole contemplation of things. But both last week's gate and this week's gate that we're talking about are on the root center. So they are pressurized gates, right? So this is an energy of pressure. And for this one, it's a pressure that is tribal, and it's often like feels a bit well, and I'm really into the Gene Keys also, and Gene Keys talks about it having the shadow of greed. And so this is where the gate of the Marrying Maiden comes from. That name comes from the I Ching, and it's the idea of a concubine who had this desire to be more, and she basically wound up marrying the emperor or whatever. And it was her aspiration that allowed her to be more, but the shadow of it can come from greed, lives here. But the important thing that I really took from when I was listening to, I like to listen to Richard Rudd's little contemplations on it at the beginning of it. So I was listening to that this morning, and he was talking about how we think of greed as such a completely bad thing, but all of the shadows are things we have to kind of embrace to find the gift. And it is actually our greed, our desire for more, that leads to the healthy aspiration that causes us to do more and be more in the tribe. So this is energy. This is part of the business circuit. This 54-32 energy is where it starts. It's the desire to do something, right? And it goes from that energy into the spleen. So it's got us looking forward right now in this energy. What is serving us, right? Are we um, are we able to fulfill our ambitions, right? So it's the pressure to achieve and rise up, as Jess has written on this beautiful slide, and be more, right? Be more. How can we be more? And part of that is doing more. And sometimes that pressure can have us doing more of the wrong things. And, you know, there's always a programming partner with every gate, which is the opposition gate, right? That's where the earth is. And right now it's gate 53, which is this energy of starting things. So this desire to be and achieve more has this also pressure on the root center, gate 53, which is like the right one just up at the top. It's one of the format gates. And it can have us trying to start things that we don't really have the energy to start. So even though there's this tribal energy to do something, it's important to ground ourselves in that energy of waiting for the clarity to know that it's the right time to start the thing and not just starting to start, because that gate of starting things needs to know that there's going to be energy to see it through, right? So I don't know. That was my little blabber about it.
Love
What
it.
do you think,
Love it.
Jess?
Absolutely love it. So we can see here gate 54. So like you said, it's in the root center right here, which again, the head and the root, those are the pressure centers, right? That's where the information is coming in through. And the root has that pulse for movement. So the gate we just came from right here was the 38, which was the fighter, right? The fighter energy. And that was very individualistic. That was about the individual. What is the thing inside of you that is worth fighting for? What is your cause? We talked a bit about the pink wall. Maybe for someone it's a pink wall. Maybe somebody else doesn't care, right? So now we're shifting into the 54, which is also has that pulse of movement, right? but more of the tribal. It's that tribal energy. It's the people around you. It's what's happening in the tribe, right? For anybody unaware, there's the individual, there's the tribal, and then there's the collective, are the different energies. And so the marrying maiden, for me, this is the question of marrying. What am I marrying into my life? What are the things when you start to look forward? What are the things I want to marry that I want to wed and bring with me and move forward with, right? This is that energy of looking forward and starting to review in a way, looking back, who was there for you, right? So that you can start to fulfill that ambition, right? And to do that promise to yourself, right? Reflecting back on also looking at the motivations of why the success, what was the motivation for that and aligning with that for the progress. And there is, again, the root center, there's that pressure. So you feel that pressure to rise up, to transform. Um, and this also embodies the energy both for the drive for the material world and the spiritual world. And this kind of looks at the energy in a way that the material world, this mundane plane, that we start to admit. So that this mundane plane, the material world, is in a way a path towards the spiritual world. So by mastering the material plane, by mastering this mundane level, we don't just look at what's there spiritually, we're looking at it together as a path towards that, right? Um, and also looking at a sense of higher purpose. It's not in a way that you're going, oh, success. I'm stepping into the success so I look cool, so I have this external validation. It's success that's centered around purpose, finding that purpose again, which was again with the 38. What was that purpose? There's an overall theme in this mutation, this quarter of mutation, of that transformation, of that purpose. Did I find that purpose?
Yeah. Uh, the Marrying Maiden also has a component of the idea of a dowry, right? Like, I'm sure most of you are aware that, it used to be that parents built up a dowry to add to what a woman would be able to bring into a partnership. And so, but now it's really like, what am I building up? What am I gathering and keeping as important for me to bring into the next chapter? So, what am I looking at right now? And these are very patriarchal, old, kind of icky terms in some ways to me. But I think if we just look at the beauty of the energy of it and think, what am I, what am I prepared to take with me into the next chapter of my life? What value am I bringing to the table? Of course we bring ourselves is that value, but this is an energy of tribalness, right? So what am I bringing to the tribe, right? So, and some of that is material, but like you said, this is not just a material gate. This is also a deeply spiritual gate. In fact, there are certain components or things that I've read that talk about how 54, line 4 specifically, is the most mystical um, energy in the chart. And yeah, so I don't know enough to really speak too well to the idea of that because it's a new thing I was just starting to explore. But it's interesting and it makes sense because, the line 4 is all about the networking, right? And the feeling the security in the opportunities and that sort of thing. So you could think, since this is also part of the business circuit and materialism and that, oh, Gate 54, line 4 could be very much about, opportunity and networking in a traditional business kind of way. But it's really also about the connecting in the deeply connecting sort of way, right? So what are we bringing to connect with our tribe?
So interesting you said that. And I was like, okay, where's the book? I don't have all the lines. I'm always incredibly impressed when people are
When
like,
people
oh,
are like,
yes, gate 54, line 4, it's this. I'm like, oh, okay. I pull out the handy dandy human design
right?
book. So gate 54, line 4 specifically is enlightenment and endarkenment. It's very
Mhm.
interesting. I love that.
Yeah, and one of my favorite new resources that I've found is oh, I'm trying to remember what the actual name of the book is, but Denise Matthews. I don't know if you're familiar with Denise Matthew. There's no S at the end. I don't know why I always want to put an S on the end. But her book is The Mandala of Life. And so I've actually been going through and reading with the mandala as it shifts in there. And so she was the first person that I remembered reading about that. And then when I was listening to Richard Rudd in his contemplation of this gene key, he's like, I don't normally talk about the lines in this. And then he talked about the same thing. So that was just this morning, piqued my curiosity. I'll be looking a little more into that. And I'm really feeling this energy of Gate 54 a lot. And I wrote a blog post um, the night before the transit shifting, which I write a transit little bit for my group. But I wrote this post on my um, website where I really contemplated this energy of what am I bringing forward? You know, because like I said, it's my environment, right? So it's, we look at all these things and everything on the route is pressure, right? So and all my nodal gates are on the root center. So I am always, it's all about a pressurized environment, pressurized perspective, and then I got an undefined head too. So I got the pressure going. But I don't have an open root. So I have a pressurized environment
Mhm.
and then,
So you have an
right.
undefined root or defined?
No, I have a defined root
Defined root, defined
um,
root. Okay.
through my emotional wave. 3955 defines
Oh,
my root.
through the emotional wave. And for anybody
Yeah.
who isn't familiar, just quickly, because we are doing so many of these closing gates in the root, um, if you have an open root, undefined root, sometimes you can feel the pressure because when things are open, it's more of that feminine energy. It's that receptive. So you're feeling what's around you. And sometimes there can be a tendency to look within yourself and ask the question and go, am I moving just to move, right? Am I moving because I feel this pressure and I have to move this pressure instead of sitting with the pressure and going, okay, I feel this, I'm aware of it. So sometimes jumping because it's open, it's like, oh, I feel this. I need to move it. I need it to go somewhere. And kind of coming to a place where you're like, okay, life has pressure. I feel pressure in life and in situations. So bringing that awareness versus
I,
the defined, yeah, having the defined route. I also have a defined route where you get that pulse of movement. And for me,
can I
that's
tell a funny story about that?
yes. Oh, please do. I love stories.
Okay. So first of all, just in case anyone's noticed my virtual background, I'm not home. I'm in Chicago, so hence I have my virtual office. So you can't see the basement I'm in my niece's house. But yesterday, so I'm in Chicago for a memorial for two people actually who we lost in the last couple of years. And so a lot of family together that has not seen each other. It's been a lot of emotional time. And so yesterday there was some downtime where there was a smaller group of us and we were sitting around playing taboo and just doing fun stuff. And somehow it wound up, of course, I start, what do you do? What do you talk? So, and some people knew a little bit about what I do and they have had me tell them stuff before. But so my niece, who's both of her parents were the two that we were memorializing. So it's a really hard time for her, right? But she saw that her husband, who's a wonderful man, was doing some things. And she's like, oh, I think he wants me to help him. And we had been talking just a little bit, like a few minutes before, about her open route, right? And I said, Jamie, do you want her to help you? And he says, no, I'm good. And she's like, yeah, but then he's going to be mad later. And I said, okay, so maybe your open route is telling you this, and maybe he will learn the lesson that if you want you to help him, that he'll ask you next time, right? Like we had this whole conversation, and she was like, okay. I said, and she's sacral, right? So I was like, do you want to help him? And she was trying to, she's like, no. Okay, this is, then don't, if he
Mhm.
needs your help,
And
he'll
don't.
learn
Yeah.
to ask, and then you can decide if you're gonna, because obviously sometimes even if we don't want to do something, sometimes we know someone needs something, we make a choice, right? And hopefully we want to do those things. But
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, I'm sure, I don't know, I don't have a defined sacral, but I'm going to guess most people with a defined sacral will find there are times where they consciously choose to do something because they think someone else needs it. And hopefully your sacral will say, uh-huh, because of that. But, I don't know. It's not something to beat yourself up if you override it once in a while, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just the awareness. Again, put the
Hmm.
beating stick down.
Exactly. And
It's
that's
the
what,
awareness and that sentence of, isn't it interesting how I didn't help him and then this happened? Or isn't it interesting that I felt the need to help him and I did help him and what happened? It's that awareness
right,
of how this energy plays out for you, right? Yeah. Oh,
right.
I love that. And it's interesting you say that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I see, I'm Sun 19, and 19 is
Uh-oh.
all about feeling the
You
need.
froze.
Oh, I froze. Uh-oh.
You're frozen, Jess.
I'm frozen.
I'm just going to babble for a minute then as soon as you
Okay. Am I
can start.
frozen?
But yeah, so I did think it was really, and that's what I said, you can, you know,
Oh, is it, am I frozen or are you frozen? Because now you're frozen for me. Tell us who's frozen. Is Kathy
okay, well, in
frozen?
the future,
Or,
you're frozen the whole time.
oh, I
You were
was
just frozen.
frozen? That was funny
Yeah.
because you were frozen for me. I was like, is Kathy frozen? Am I frozen? Are you frozen?
Julie,
Am I
was
frozen?
everybody frozen?
Who's frozen? All of us.
Jessica
That,
was frozen for me. Jessica was frozen.
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
frozen. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
So,
me.
so we missed everything you were saying.
Oh, what was I saying? Oh, I was saying I'm 19. So my son is 19, which deeply feels the needs of
Mm.
others. And the shadow side of that is where you just that codependence where you love helping other people. And so that was a big, big one for me.
And
But
it's also on the root center.
yes, and it's on
Yeah.
the root, exactly. And but how what that leads to is exactly like I froze. That's when your energy starts to freeze, when you're starting to take on, especially with your sacral, taking on those things that are not the yeses for you. So somebody out there needed to hear that. Love that. So
Yeah.
back to yeah, so gate 54 though, that drive, that root, um, on this route, the Marrying Maiden, some of the questions we've put in there and exactly the same as last time. These are just guiding questions. If you come up with other questions, please, please share them with us. Like, let us know questions that potentially came from these questions or other questions while talking about this energy. You're like, oh, this is a question that would be pertinent for me. So the first one we have is what ambitions or goals inspire me to seek growth, right? That energy of that growth. And how do they align with my purpose and values? Back to the purpose and values, right? It's not just doing it for validation. And then the next question we have is, and this is a hard one and a good one. Who was there for me in my pursuit for success and who wasn't? Who were the people that were there for me and who wasn't? And this is not a beating stick again. This is not to say, oh, I can't believe they did this, or, but just looking at who was there, who wasn't, right? And then marrying, going into this energy of marrying, who are those people I'm going to bring in to move forward with me? Who can I work with and trust? Who can I rely on for this next cycle? And then looking at that from a little bit more of a zoomed out perspective, what other forces, what were the other aspects that were there supporting me and what did not? So this could look very, very different for everybody. I mean, this could start with even your environment. Like, did my environment support me? Where I was, did that support me? What were the other aspects in my life that helped me on that path to success, that purposeful success? And then asking, where have I been driven by external recognition? And how can I refocus on what truly matters to me? And put a star next to this, not to beat yourself up. There's no judgment in this. This is not about going, oh, I was doing this for the wrong reasons. It's like, oh, this was very interesting. I was looking for external validation and I did these things. Isn't it interesting? Not, oh, why did I do that, right? Isn't it interesting? And bring that awareness of, I was doing this. The success of this was for that recognition, that external recognition versus something within me.
The
And
greed
that's,
versus the aspiration,
yeah, exactly.
right?
And so looking at, where is my power? Where is my energy? Is it within me or am I putting it outside of me? Where I'm looking for others to fulfill my purpose, where I'm looking for others and putting it like without, looking for that validation from other people instead of looking for and sourcing, self-sourcing within you. And then what steps can I take to transform my ambitions into meaningful achievements that contribute to both my material and spiritual growth? So starting to look at what are the things I can do? How do I start paving that pathway towards where I'm trying to go, right? We start step by step by step. We don't start on the highway, right? We got to start with those small steps. You start running by putting on those running shoes, taking those first few steps, taking that walk, then doing the run. Then eventually you get to the marathon, right? But you get there through those steps. So what are those steps that I can start taking in alignment with who I am and my purpose?
So these are wonderful questions, and I really have been contemplating a lot of this myself. And one of the things that I would add that's come through my own contemplation
Mm-hmm.
is, this idea of like what other forces are supporting me and who's been there. But looking at it from the lens of, have I told people what I need for them to support me, right? Because we can just say, well, they're not there for me. But it's kind of like when I had that whole thing with my niece where I said, you know, she's like, he might be mad. Well, um, have you, had the conversation to say, if you would like my help, ask me, right? Or do you just keep trying to mind read and perpetuate the cycle, right? So how can I look at this cycle of support? And I'm not even saying that they weren't even talking about like it was a problem. This was me using examples when I was talking to them and took a little tiny thing, right? So I don't want to make it sound like I'm telling some story or about people. It really is not a thing. It was just an awareness that I was thinking about how we sometimes try to people please and fix things. And by doing so, not only do we not get the support we need, we don't give people the opportunities to grow in the way they can grow, right? And they can choose not to grow if they don't want to do it, but we don't even tell them. So asking for the kind of support you need in the way that you need it so that you really know whether or not it's something that can be there for you, you
I
know?
absolutely, I love that. And I put on the end of that, have I told them what I need? And what does this bring up within me? How does that feel to
Yeah,
ask for help? How does it feel to say or even admit that I need help? And this comes back to the people pleasing. One of the things we talk about in positive intelligence, which is looking at our emotions, but through a positive lens, not that everything's good. It's looking at things and going, okay, this has happened, but how do I move forward? And the thing in people pleasing that we look at is that the lie of the people pleaser is that the lie that you tell yourself within people pleasing is that I want to save this relationship. So I'm not going to bring up my needs. I'm not going to say this. I'm going to carry it. And I'm not going to say to you what I want because that'll cause conflict. When in reality, that's the lie. Because if I say to you, if you go, hey, Jess, do you want to move the Zoom back an hour? And I'm like, no, not really. I have to pick up my kids or doing something. And I go, yeah, sure. But then I get flustered and then I get angry and resentful. And then I take that out on you. And then I'm resentful towards you. That's not building that relationship, right? That's
right.
further taking away from that relationship. Plus, that puts you in a position where you're like, but I don't even know because she doesn't really tell me how she feels, right? Instead of building that relationship where you can have those conversations and that people pleaser where you're like, I'm always trying to make people happy. But then you end up being resentful and seeing where that sits in you. Because for me, that was a big realization. I was like, I'm not resentful. I'm totally not resentful when I look after everyone and do everything. But then I realized I was like, when it's me and I'm like, I need some help, and people go, no, I'm busy. I'm like, how could you be busy? Because I didn't have that boundary and I didn't know how to say no when I needed to say no.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then we resent when other people don't do the same for us.
Yeah.
And we act like they're the problem.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
They're just the
Exactly.
mirror.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
really, and this can be a big one because I think people pleasing is a pretty a common one for a lot of us, but also not ever looking at it and going, I'm a people pleaser. It's just your current habit, right? It's your current pathway that you're following. It's the current way in which you're operating. And then you bring it to that awareness, and then you can start to shift and change it, not becoming that and owning it as who you are, but it's just a current habit that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then also there's a component of it of it's not even that people always do the things. The people pleasing isn't always, it's not always people pleasing. It's sometimes just like conflict avoidance is the same thing, right? Like I don't want them to be mad, so I'm
Mhm.
not going to tell them the thing.
Yeah.
So then we don't know each other's needs. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a generation where it was so romanticized for people to know what you need. Like if someone really loves you, you don't have to tell them, was kind of the way, that
Mhm.
you were taught. Like if you were loved, then your person knew that you needed X, Y, and Z. And if they didn't, then you would be sad about it and just resent that they didn't know it rather than saying, I need X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
You know, there does come to be a time though where if you've said continually, I need X, Y, and Z, I need X, Y, and Z, and the only time you get X, Y, and Z is when you specifically say X, Y, and Z, there is something that at that point starts to feel like, really, then, that's different. But if you're never saying, I need X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
or or you're not saying, I don't like that because you want to avoid the argument. You think it's going to be easier that way.
Yeah.
It might be easier in that moment for you,
Mhm.
but it's probably not easier in the long run for anyone.
No. And again, building that relationship, like those harder conversations, that's what builds that trust where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I know this person's going to tell me. I know they're going to come forward with exactly how they feel and what's going on. And that builds that trust. Definitely for me, it was radical self-responsibility when I started going, oh, because before what I did, I was like, but you're responsible for knowing what I want, and having to shift that and go, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not at all. That is
Well,
my responsibility to first off know what I need and then to articulate that. And it's a bonus, right? When somebody knows exactly like you said, though, not where you're like, please, I need this, please, I need this, and that's being ignored, or that you're having to constantly ask in that way. But when you're in that place of going, well, I expect you to just know and to just do those things where you have to find that responsibility within yourself to go, I'm responsible for communicating and knowing those needs. Yeah, that was that.
it's interesting to think about this because, at face value, you look at this as a root center gate facing the spleen, and you don't, and it's also part of the economic circuit, and it's all this stuff about materialisms and even the mysticism stuff. You don't really, on face value, see how much about relationships is in this
Mhm.
energy, right?
Yeah.
And, it's really, and it mirrors that, whenever you look at, I know you know this, but like you were just talking about your gate 19.
Mhm.
Well, 54 and 19 mirror each other on the root, right? One points towards the solar plexus, the other one points to the spleen.
Hold on
So,
a second. Let me zoom in so we can show
yeah.
people. So they're not like, what number is where?
So, yeah, we're in gate 54 there. And if you look opposite across is gate 19, which we were just talking about, which is, there's a certain amount of symmetry in the energy, although one points towards the solar plexus and emotional energy, and the other one points towards the spleen, which is about health and survival, right? And fear and safety.
Mhm.
And, how much of our decisions in our relationships are related to fear and safety and our health and well-being and our security. And so that's a really strong feeling right now because we're also, nothing exists in isolation. So this is the sun. So the sun is the majority of the neutrino stream. But we also right now are in the middle of two long-term transits that are defining the 3536, which is all about emotional experiences, that energy to the throat. So we're looking at all of this energy of gate 54 through the lens of this energy we've been sitting in for a while now. I mean, the 36 we've had Neptune in 36 for a long time. And 35, Jupiter's been there for, I don't know, a month or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's been a minute, maybe 2 months. I don't know. I have no concept of time anymore, I swear. But Jupiter's been there for a minute. So we're feeling that energy that's saying, what are my expectations? Am I willing to settle for less? Right? Not saying we should. I'm saying, am I settling for less? Am I expecting too much? Am I expecting something so specific that it's limiting my ability to really get what I maybe need and really want?
Mhm.
So all of these things come into the energy of gate 54. And that's one of the things that I've really loved about, you know, uh, earlier this summer, I started a process of writing about the transits and contemplating what I'm going through, things that I'm experiencing through the energy of the transits. And I don't in any way want to confuse anybody by saying that the transits are what decide things, but they're such a beautiful tool of contemplation. And we were talking last week about how, human design teaches about passenger consciousness, right? We're not driving the car. We are sitting in the back seat as the passenger, and letting the magnetic monopole drive the vehicle, right? But where are you looking? Are you looking through a dirty window? Are you looking at the blank wall that you've been driving along for hours when meanwhile the ocean is out that side and you just have to turn your head? So that's what the contemplation for me does, is it helps me see what's the filter I am viewing all of this through.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. It's almost in a way like that backdrop energy, right? Like that
mhm.
surrounding.
Yeah. Yeah. I am curious if anyone on the call, if you normally look at transits, is it something that you find value in? I'm assuming if you're here, it's either because one, you just can't get enough of Jess or me, probably more Jess, um, all that effervescent energy, or you are interested, and I'm just wondering if it's a new interest or an older, more established interest. If anybody feels like, letting us know anything, but
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
If it's the transits, or I would say that it probably big pull for this is that closing energy, right?
right.
Finding out how to close that loop to start the new year and on a more love you both. Oh, we love you
Aw.
too. um, finding that way to step more fully into yourself, following that energy, especially during this closing period.
I'm actually going to pop the link to my blog that I just wrote this weekend
Yeah.
as I was contemplating this transit because it's been a, I'm not going to lie, I'm in the midst of a lot of emotional stuff right now, some
Mhm.
of which I won't even talk about even like I might journal about it, but I'm not going to blog about some of it, right? It's just not fair to the other people involved. But the parts I will talk about is, I'm here in Chicago, which is where I lived. This is, I went on the roof and then shortly there and then left Chicago
Mhm.
to move to the suburbs. And then after I did that, I wound up moving to Georgia. So I'm a Chicago city girl, and I spent the first 2 nights in Chicago. Now I'm out in Rockford, which is where I lived as a little girl, but as a young girl. But it's really a place to really look at the environment that shaped me up until my Saturn return. And I've been off the roof for a while now, but I've really been for a few years contemplating what are the pieces of me that I left behind when I went on the roof. And I've been saying I'm going to get them back. I'm going to bring them back. And that's been easier said than done in a lot of ways, right? There's parts of us that we think, you know, we need permission for or something. I don't even know. But blogging about that here in this place, blogging about this energy of um, my environment, the pressure, all of that stuff has been really meaningful. And the reason that I'm here is I'm from a very large family. I'm the youngest of 9 kids. So my oldest sister was 15 years older than me, and she passed away in 2022. And a couple weeks ago, her husband of 53 years passed away. So we had a joint celebration of like their love and their marriage and that sort of memorial service. So it's been a time of really reflecting on here is this um, very different relationship than what I have. Like, and I'm honoring it, but I don't even know how to what I want to say in that. But it was a very different they had a very different kind of, completing each other's sentences type of relationship that honestly I don't want, but I'm honoring it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's that whole idea of we think that we want something
Mhm.
because we see other people happy with it.
Mhm.
But that's not necessarily what you want. I want to be able to go and do the things I want to do. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to watch and honor something that you don't really have aspiration for.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
Well, first off, sending you a big hug, sending you a big hug right now. Love you so much. That's a lot, and sending you so much love. And anybody out there who's going through stuff right now, just take a minute to send you love, so much love. Know that you are so deeply loved, and uh,
Thanks.
yeah, absolutely. And also celebrating your awareness because a lot of people go, oh, that looks beautiful what they have, but realizing you're so different from that person that just because it works for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And same thing with business. So many times it's like, this is the plan for business. And it's like, that might work for them, but maybe not for you. That we're so individual, right? We're all so different in our own beautiful, beautiful, unique ways. And also, really centering in the importance of environments. We talk a lot about, for reflectors, how important environment is, but environment's really important for all of us, right?
Right.
And that's, the people, the environment, the people in your life. That's the place where, for my caves, how do I make it cavey? Like, what does my office look like? How do you, um, make that environment that feels good for you? And giving yourself that permission that it gets to be what feels right for you, even if it's not what somebody else wants. And also, oh my gosh, I feel so silly because I told you, I was like, oh, you're in Chicago, go see the bean. And
Like I'm a tourist.
you're like, yeah, right, because when I went to
I'm
Chicago
like,
that was big for me, and you're like, what?
I'm like, it's freaking cold as hell. I cannot like, and honestly, the dryness, I forgot how bad it is. Like
Mm,
I'm constantly like trying to drink just to like function,
yeah.
drinking. But because the heat is so intense here, I don't miss that at all. But yeah, I lived in the city, you know, and I'm a city girl at heart. And, the thing I wrote about in my blog was my niece who lives in the city took me to a club that used to be not one, but two different clubs I used to go to over the years. And that was wild. And also a little bit like, really? Where is everybody? And then I'm like, oh yeah, because it's only midnight. Nobody's really here yet, right? 'Cause this is, and
After,
so then you're like, you can have this idea of, you can romanticize, like I can romanticize the parts of me I left behind. But I'm
Mhm.
61 years old. I'm not going to be clubbing at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? I can miss that bit of me and want a little taste of it. And it was really beautiful of her to take me there.
Yes.
Um, but some of those parts of you are meant to be like things you integrate into new ways, shapes, and forms, right? Moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was just a lot of stuff that, came up for me and putting it into perspective of the transits and my environmental nodes.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely.
was interesting.
And definitely
Lot.
just want to share for anybody who doesn't know Kathy, one of the reasons I love her so much. She is so much fun and so much fun to go dancing with, and just like so, you're just wonderful because I mean,
Thank you.
sometimes people don't like to go dancing, which is totally fun, fine. But you're just like, we're dancing, music, let's go, and like fully there, fully present in the moment, in the mood. And that, yeah, I just absolutely love that about you.
I don't care if anybody else is dancing. If I want to dance, I'm gonna
Yeah,
dance.
yeah. I think
Right?
when I got there the one night, I think you had like started everybody dancing, which was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Oh, awesome. If anybody has any questions, feel free to pop those in, or any just moments of contemplation you'd like to share with us, or any other questions that you feel like, oh, this was a great question that really helped me like step into and explore the energy of Gate 54. But yeah, thanks for being here with us, and we love you all.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye. Did
Bye.
it? Bye.